dealing with a recommendation to create a Willamette Falls Locks Authority as a state chartered public corporation, and then to secure capital funding for the repair with a goal of reopening the Willamette locks. We've spoke in favor of that. House Bill 4103, which allows communities to set their own speed limits on local roads. We spoke in favor of that also. And House Bill 4071, which deals with the algae blooms that affected water supplies up and down the river, including us. A couple years ago, this bill would take several moves that would help create more monitoring and response capability for future occurrences like that. And we spoke in favor of that bill also. So here we are on day one. We've entered testimony on 3 bills. I also attended a meeting with the governor's staff and a group of what I guess I would term as people that are concerned with climate change, that are talking about Oregon's building codes. Oregon's building codes are undergoing a significant amount of change already. The governor issued a executive order a couple years ago that had set a goal of having buildings in Oregon be I'm losing my terminology here, net zero on energy by 2030. And the changes in the building codes are dealing with whether things are changing enough to achieve that in the next 10 years, essentially. Some people think that codes with changes already underway and contemplated for change over the next few years will accomplish that. Others think it's not enough. There also is a proposal that some people are advocating for that would create a pathway for cities to have a more demanding energy code than the statewide code. And right now that doesn't happen. That will probably be a topic of a discussion that will come up again. I spoke at that meeting in favor of having more data available that we can assess what the effectiveness is of changes already underway, and from that be better able to judge whether we need to do something more or whether we are doing all we can handle right now. So that's an ongoing discussion, I guess I would say. Upcoming, there is a Clackamas County Mayor's, Chairs, and City Managers meeting proposed, though we don't have an agenda and are not clear if that will need to happen. Clackamas County Coordinating Committee is meeting and going to be looking at the proposed roadway improvements and jurisdictional transfers that can take place under the new Strategic Investment Fund, which is a subset of the vehicle registration fee that was created. It's about, at this point, proposed to be an 8-year plan that'll amount to about $1.1 million a year in those road improvements. For the Wilsonville area, there may be discussion about jurisdictional transfer of portions of Stafford Road and Advance Road from the county to the city. We'll have to see how that goes. In the 2020 short session in Salem, we are working still with the county and with some other groups on advocating for construction of a 3rd lane on 205 down to and including the Abernathy Bridge in Oregon City that would enable that freeway to flow a little better, hopefully, if we were able to do that. Upcoming, also have a meeting of the Greater Portland Inc. board on which I represent the Small Cities Consortium by request of the other members of that group. The Greater Portland Inc. is engaged in a discussion about whether or not a merger with the Portland Business Alliance would be advantageous to both groups, and that is as yet unresolved. Clackamas County Business Alliance is meeting and is going to have a presentation by public transit providers of Clackamas County that will be led by Wilsonville Smart Systems own Director Dwight Brashear. Also will be Canby Area Transit, South Clackamas Transit District from Molalla area, Sandy area Metro Transit, and TriMet all be part of that discussion also. Congressman Kurt Schrader is going to be in the area for a town hall kind of a meeting with electeds upcoming, and we will be interested in whether there is any potential federal funding for the I-5 Boone Bridge proposed project that would help a lot with I-5 that Wilsonville has been working on with ODOT. And also, of course, interested in Federal Transit Administration funding for potential renewable buses for our smart system over time. We are gradually trending toward less and less diesel and more CNG and electrics as we move forward. Clackamas County Coordinating Committee Metro Issues Subcommittee will be meeting and talking about the proposed metro transportation plans. Greater Portland Inc. has their annual economic summit for the entire region, which will focus on education and industry partnerships and how to ignite innovation and help serve students at the same time. Always an interesting event, and it was postponed because the ceiling at the Art Museum fell in here a few months ago, and we got aced out of it. So apparently that's all been taken care of. And then last but not least, the Metro Transportation 2020 Funding Task Force is meeting still, looking now at potential Tier 2 travel corridors that might be rolled into that proposal. We'll have to see what those look like. Looking at proposed programmatic investments, including alternative modes, transportation facilities for bikes and peds and trail systems and things like that, along with still some discussion of transit in the programmatic portion of that. So there are lots of things upcoming, I guess I would say, and we will try to stay abreast of those. One of the things that takes more of your mayor's time than many other things, I guess. That will then bring us to, since we have no formal communications, to our citizens input and community announcements, which is an opportunity for visitors to address council on things not on the agenda. Also time to address things that are on the agenda but not scheduled for public hearing. Staff and council will make every effort to respond to questions raised during this portion, either before tonight's meeting ends or as soon as we can thereafter. We do request you limit your comments to 3 minutes, and I do not have any speaker cards. Is there any member of the public that would like to speak in this portion? If not, let's move on to our councilor comments, liaison reports, and meeting announcements, starting with Council President Ackervall.
Thank you. This last Monday, let's see, January 27th, I did attend a school board meeting and participated in kind of an open discussion with several community entities and members, along with the mayor. And at that meeting, there was a student panel that spoke as well. This meeting was focused on continuing some of the conversations that came out of the Equity Summit that was held last October. I believe it was in October. And that will be an ongoing conversation. So I was glad to participate in that and listen to some of the youth in our community, their perspective and their experiences. Some very personal stories shared from the panel members, as well as have that dialogue with West Lynn City Council was represented there, our police, service people, community members, the school boards. Yes, the library as well, library staff from both West Lynn and Wilsonville. So that was an important and good conversation. And I apologize, I had packets to share with all of you. And those packets are at home on my dining room table. So I will get them for everyone's mailbox, so you'll see those in your mailbox. That was just some of the material that was provided, and I'll continue to update as I hear more from those conversations and from that group. Yeah. Oh, and I did want to call out one item that is on our rolling schedule, because I think it's just an important and a cool service. Huh?
228?
228? Well, no, it wasn't 228, but maybe you're going to talk about, oh, the 228 daddy-daughter dance? That's what you were thinking.
I don't have one,
You know,
but you
I
do.
don't know how the tickets are with that event, but I know they go quick, so there's a waiting list. Okay. Yeah, I think we tried to secure those in December or something, because I know it's a, it's a big item. The thing I wanted to mention is the tax help that happens at our library, and I know this happens every year, but it's starting up again. I believe it's on the Saturdays from 10 to 2. That's a cool service that's offered in our Wilsonville library. So. And that starts the 8th, and then it's again on the 15th, and then on the 22nd, and, you know, so you can start to see that regularly happening on the Saturdays, because we are now in that time frame where we have to work on our taxes. Yeah, so, thank you.
Thank you very much. Councilor Lehan.
I really don't have much this evening. I was just other than to say I had a great time at the chess tournament at Charbonneau last week, and where we had Nick Raptis, who is a international chess grandmaster, and I know nothing about chess. I don't even know how to set the board up, really, but it was very interesting to watch because he simultaneously played 8 or 10 people, and very quickly dispatched everyone. But and we had kids there playing, as well as and our oldest player was 95. So every sort of individual there to play, and it was a lot of fun, even for people who, like me, who know nothing about chess. It was a lot of fun to watch. So great community event.
Okay, thank you. Councilor West.
Good evening. I had the opportunity to chair 2 different task forces. The first one that I did was the Parks Bond Task Force, and that Councilor Akval is helping out with and is there to support also. It was the second meeting of the Parks Bond Task Force, and in this meeting we delved into the different options in the master plan and kind of seeing what was available, what were the different ideas in the different parts of the city, what people may or may not like, and kind of get an idea of the comprehensive master plan that has been developed with tons of public input over a long period of time. And it's quite beautiful and daunting all at the same time. So people got some exposure to that. That was a lot of fun. And then people can talk about ideas and kind of brainstorm on that master plan. And so that went well. It was a diverse group, varying ideas, experiences, age groups, populations. So I found that very interesting. I continue to have the looming issue of cost and finance around it. So that tends to be a big kind of looming thing about the Parks Bond, but we're getting through it. And it's fun to engage with my neighbors on this task. So the other one was the Equity Housing Task Force. We just wrapped that up, which was a lot of fun. I just want to publicly thank Planning Commissioner Mr. Armon, who was a great support and help during that whole entire task force too. If I was running late from work, like it happened in the last meeting, and I was coming in scrubs, I mean, he'd step right in, and I really enjoyed participating with him in this and working with him. It was really a fun experience. So I also think he's done a great job representing it on the Planning Commission when it's come up. You can go and watch those meetings too on YouTube. They're really informative, and I found them to be so, even though I was already at the task force, even the Planning Commission perspective was actually a really good perspective to get also. So those are there, and I think it just did or is about to go before them again because we just had our last meeting. And one thing that really, for me, I appreciated about the Equity Housing Task Force was that it was very practical, and there was a lot of great ideas and some innovation, some things that were just kind of outside the box that might work really great for Wilsonville and be really creative. But I really enjoyed how it took that practicality but still like we're finding a way to honor human dignity with the people in our community to find affordable, quality, respectable housing that everybody can be proud of. And a lot of work and thought went into that. And so I'm really proud of everybody on that task force, from people from Clackamas Community College to the building community to myself and Planning Commissioner Armon and everybody involved, and just average citizens that really care about this issue. I really think we kind of struck that balance while having that empathy that's necessary while finding practical solutions. We may not get them all, they all may not happen, but it was a lot of fun to be a part of that. So that happened this week, and that's kind of what I did through my 2 weeks since being here last time.
Thank you. Councilor Linville.
Well, I also don't have very much of a report this month. Not very many activities that I needed to attend during the interim since our last meeting. And given that that was on a Thursday, I think it was, so it's been a little bit shorter time. I did want to mention again just for the public that the second in the series that Greg Leo is doing on understanding government and it being able to understand local government in a little more depth will be the 4th of February, tomorrow at 6 o'clock at the Wilsonville Public Library. And so I wanted to encourage people to attend that. I will also be attending the Leaders Roundtable with Representative Schrader on the 18th. And then on the 19th, there are two meetings that I will attend. One is the French Prairie Forum meeting, and that's a regular monthly meeting, and that's held at the OSU Extension Office. And then on the 19th as well, here in City Hall will be the I-5 Pedestrian Bridge Forum, which is at 5 o'clock. And so I just encourage people that are interested in attending that to come and listen and provide input. That's my report.
Thank you very much. Second meeting for this month is going to be off schedule for council on a Thursday on the 20th because of President's Day. We also tentatively are scheduling a meeting on the 18th in addition to the meeting on the 20th in case the council decides tonight to take a certain action that would require completion within 30 days. Is that correct? That'll become clear as we go forward on our discussion tonight on the term limits issue. Okay, let's go forward then. If we could ask for the consent agenda, please.
Resolution number 2786, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing South Metro Regional Transit SMART to purchase two 21-passenger compressed natural gas buses from Sheckley Northwest Sales, Inc. And the second item is resolution number 2792, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing the city manager to amend a professional services agreement with Murray Smith, Inc. for design and construction engineering services for the Memorial Park Pump Station project.
Thank you. Is there a motion on the consent agenda?
Your Honor, I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Thank you. Is there a second?
Second.
Moved and second, we approve consent agenda as read. Two items. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. Bringing us to new business, starting with Resolution 2785.
Resolution number 2785, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville authorizing a Korean War Memorial Interpretive Center agreement between the City of Wilsonville and the Korean War Memorial Foundation of Oregon.
Thank you. Do we have a little bit of presentation on this tonight? Mr. McCarty, good evening.
Good evening, Mr. Mayor and council. Mr. Stevenson gave you a pretty good report at the work session. He has some family that's ill at home, so I basically told him he should go home. So I will just give you a little summary of, for this new meeting. Basically, the Korean War Memorial Foundation of Oregon is interested in constructing an interpretive center within the city's Parks and Recreation Administrative Building, which will display artifacts and history pertaining to the Korean War. The city is to allow the KWAMFO to construct the interpretive center within a designated area, which is approximately 350 square feet, at their expense, with the city's contribution being just the space. After the interpretive center is fully constructed, the KWMFO will donate the interpretive center, including all contents and artifacts, to the city, at which time the city will own, operate, maintain the interpretive center, and otherwise abide by all the terms of the agreement. Basically, I don't have much more than that. I mean, I think it's a great deal for everybody. We've worked with them for a long time, and especially Mr. Stevenson. He's had a really good relationship with them, and this is really near and dear to him. I know he's worked on this for a long time. The construction would begin in March of 2020, with construction completed no later than July of 23. And again, no fiscal impact to the city at all. So with that.
Yeah, I mean, I've had some involvement also with this group. They have been working for some years, and as the veterans themselves have matured, I guess I would say, they have come to depend more and more on the Korean business community, which values this memorial highly. Yeah. And I understand from that group that it has been a long-term goal to tell the story more completely about what happened in the Korean War and the relationship between the United States and Korea. And so they are very enthusiastic and very strongly supportive of this idea, is my perception of the group.
And it's amazing when the kids come in there for their field trips there. They are just mesmerized by this, and it's just nice. And with this added little interpretive center here, I think it'll add to their whole history. They'll learn more about it, and I think everybody will. It'll be really cool.
So council, questions of staff on this item on the Korean War Memorial Interpretive Center? No questions? Okay. Council, what is your pleasure with regard to Resolution 2785?
Your Honor, I move to approve resolution number 2785.
Thank you. Is there a second?
A second.
Moved and seconded. We approve 2785. Discussion?
That's great.
Good.
Fantastic.
No discussion? If that's the case, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much.
That brings us to Resolution 2790, please.
Resolution 2790, a resolution of the City of Wilsonville amending Resolution 2676, authorizing acquisition of the property and property interests related to the construction of the 5th Street to Kinsman Road Extension Project through eminent domain.
Okay, I'm going to step down from the dais for this because I have a legal property interest in a property on which some of the construction might bear, and I'm going to pass the gavel to the council president to handle your council actions with regard to 2790.
Thank you. I assume we have a staff report.
Yes.
Thank you.
Good evening, council. My name is Zach Weigel, Capital Projects Engineering Manager for the city, and before you is a resolution amending a previous resolution that was approved by council back in October of 2018 that authorizes the city to begin acquisition and use of eminent domain for purchase of property for the 5th the Kinsman Extension Project. The reason for the amendment of the previous resolution is that we have gone further with design and have adjusted the numbers a little bit. We added another property that needed a temporary easement on it. So those numbers changed a little bit. Also, it's been quite a bit of time since the last resolution was approved, so we just want to reaffirm that council's approval of that authority to purchase the property. So happy to answer any questions you have.
Thank you. Is there any questions from council members for staff on this? We did have some discussion during the work session, but are there any questions? Then would anyone like to make a motion?
Madam President, I would like to move to approve resolution number 2790.
Is there a second?
Second.
And do we have any discussion once we have our motion and our second? Yeah.
I just have a comment, and it's my understanding that under this resolution that it is authorizing the city to acquire property. Is it always purchased, or is it, how is the property acquired?
For the most part, it's acquired. There are times where properties will donate land for a project that will benefit them, yeah. But for the most part, it is purchased.
Purchased.
Are there any other questions, discussion, I guess? No. Then if there's no other discussion, then we can move to the vote. And all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed or abstain, then the vote passes 4-0. And then do I do this?
Yeah.
I never,
Yay.
one click.
Natural.
Thank you.
Thank you, Council President, for handling that. That will bring us then to what was published as Resolution 2791. I guess the first thing I would like to do is perhaps to ask City Attorney to explain what we're doing instead of option 1 or 2. Is your mic on?
Oops, no, now it is. Sorry
Thank you.
about that. As Councilor Linville moved, we're going to substitute the options that staff prepared for, as noted in the staff report, and maybe I should just back up to that for a minute. So for the sake of public awareness, the City Council received an initiative petition entitled Wilsonville City Term Limits on or about April 8th, 2019. And at the last council meeting, council received official notification that enough signatures had been obtained to put that ballot measure onto the May ballot. As a result of that, council has 30 days to act on that ballot measure in a couple of different ways. Or to not act. If no action is taken, then the matter just goes on to the ballot measure as it's written. The other option that council has the opportunity to do, and we talked about 2 items being either to approve or reject, but after some discussion with Petitioners Council and the Secretary of State, we determined that it made more sense just to get to the third option that council has, which is to, after going over the ballot measure and discussing it, to decide whether or not you wish to offer a counter ballot, competing ballot measure, I believe is the term they use to describe it. And that would go on the same ballot, but you have a very short period of time to do that. You have 30 days from that January 24th meeting where you receive notice of that there were sufficient signatures to make that determination. So that means you've got this meeting, and if we meet again, as is tentatively set on the 18th, then you could carry that over to that meeting if you needed to. But tonight is certainly the time to start the discussion. As you recall, last meeting, we didn't discuss it at all. We just advised council that the signatures had been achieved, but Councilor West wasn't present, and we thought it was best to have this discussion with all of the councilors present, so we wanted to wait for him to be here. So this will be the first discussion of that ballot measure. And if you don't have any more questions, the staff report is in the packet, but if you'd like me to say anything more, let me know.
No, that's probably sufficient. We will subsequently consider ordinance number 840, which is related to this, so we don't need to handle that part of it under this item. I do think that it's important that the council weigh in on their perspective on this, and I would like to ask each counselor to give us their perspective, to give the public their perspective on it. I'm not looking for a debate. I would like you to make your statement and then let the next person do the same. I think it's necessary that we have some sense of council's overall position before we can entertain the possible options that are existent about a competing ballot measure or other actions. So I would like to ask Councilor Linville to lead off, if I could, with that discussion about the perspective that you might want us to understand from your viewpoint on the overall term limits measure.
Okay. Well, the charter of the city of Wilsonville currently prescribes the limits on the terms of office for all members of the city council, including the mayor and the 4 councilors. Specifically, the charter states, and I quote, "A mayor shall be elected for a term of 4 years," end quote, and quote, "at each biennial general election after this charter takes effect, 2 councilors shall be elected, each for a term of 4 years," end quote. The city of Wilsonville was incorporated in October of 1969, and the charter of the city of Wilsonville was enacted the current charter was enacted in 1987. Since the time of incorporation, the city has had a total of 51 years of incorporation. And there have been a total of 54 elected city councilors during that period of time. Most of whom have served much less than 12 years. So historically, that has been the pattern. During the same period, Wilsonville has had a total of 8 mayors, and the majority serving for an average of 6 years. Only 2 mayors have served longer than 10 years. So in my mind, these facts would appear to refute the argument that city councilors in particular are elected for life, or that continuing election of incumbent candidates has historically been an issue for the city of Wilsonville. And short of a confirmation that term limits are necessary to eliminate elected for life reality, I might only assume that the purpose of putting the term limit initiative on the ballot at this time is a political measure rather than one born out of our Wilsonville experience. I would suggest that if the citizens of our great community are dissatisfied with any elected official, either the councilors or the mayor, including myself, that they exercise their democratic right at the ballot box. I am certain that there are many qualified candidates that can be forwarded to the voters at each general election, and I submit that the decision of who shall be elected be left to the citizens. I can tell you that from my experience, it takes time to build up policy expertise, or to learn how to get things done in a governance body. So experience helps people become more effective at their work. But I think in the end, it should be up to the voters to decide who is elected, and that option for candidates be left open for the citizens to decide at the polls.
Okay, thank you. Councilor West.
I think this is good policy. The current term limits proposed and asked to be on the ballots by the citizens through a democratic process is 12 out of 20 years. I was driving to work the other day and I was just like, gosh, most people are pretty well vested in their retirement by then at work. 12 years is a long time. So we're not sacrificing experience for appropriate and healthy turnover within a seat that, in my opinion, can be easily just kind of coasted through and you can get reelected over and over again pretty easy. Chief Petitioner Scott Starr said, I'm supporting this. He told me personally, and I know he would have no problem with me reiterating this, is because I could barely do anything and I know I'd be reelected over and over and over again. And he goes, at a certain point, I believe that the fresh ideas, new perspectives is really important on the council. We have term limits in our political process. They do exist currently. At the highest elected office in our land right now is president. He's term limited for 2 years. And on the lower levels, we see it work successfully too, because Lake Oswego has them for 8 years too. This would mirror Tualatin's term limits and other municipalities throughout the state, region, and the country that run successfully with term limits. I have no problem term limiting myself out and just doing my time and then going on and serving my community in a different way. Oregon has a long history of the initiative process, direct democracy. And it's kind of unique to our state in some ways. Not a lot of states have it in the way we do. And I think that it is important that we honor the voice of the citizens who wanted to decide this for themselves on the ballot, just like they can decide it whether or not we sit in this up at this diocese ourselves. They're going to decide for themselves if they want us to be term limited. It is their decision, not ours. So if they decide not to term limit us, fantastic, that's their decision. If they decide to term limit us, then that's their decision, we serve them. And I think that this process, basically, it couldn't be more Oregon, it couldn't be more democratic in how it was done. A number of volunteers sacrificed a lot of time to go door to door to gather signatures. Now, full disclosure, I was going to stay neutral on the issue. I was pretty determined to stay neutral on the issue. You can ask a lot of people that. But as things had developed, as I had sit here on the council, I decided that this was good policy, changed my mind, and gathered a few hundred signatures near the end. So I think that's appropriate for everybody to know that I did do that I went out and gathered some signatures for this cause. But I did it because I think it's good policy. And I think that, and I believe in that direct democracy process. And, excuse me, and I think that it represents, I think it will give people to hear their voices heard, and they'll get to vote on this in May, and then we'll go from there. That's all I have.
Councilor Akval, would you like to go next?
Sure. I agree that we have this process here, and I agree that now our community members should be able to vote on this. And I mean, my understanding, that's the framework that we have now, is that this will go to the ballot. I I think that this has the potential to change the shape and the consistency of leadership far into the future for Wilsonville. And so, I think it's important that the community is involved in that because it's their community. I think at first glance, I understand that it can sound like a reasonable concept. Term limits and 12 years sounds like a long time. My daughter's turning 9 this week. 9 years has been a blink. So, sometimes our perception of time can be different. It's relative to the work that you're doing and the situation that you're in. I do want to provide some context on this because I have serious concerns about it. I think that, we all live in a pretty incredible city, and I think that we all feel that, all of us. And I believe that we didn't end up this way by chance. I think that it's taken a lot of different people working together in a productive spirit to make it this special place. And I'm a data person, so I review the community survey that we have, and we've done it 3 times now. So 3 data points, you have a trend line, and this survey is done by an outside company. They do this type of work all over the nation. It's statistically accurate. And I think that we know that we live in a special place, but this puts some metrics on it. And in our last version of the community survey, we had 94% of Wilsonville community members rate their quality of life in our city as excellent or good. And there was 95% that gave a positive response as Wilsonville as a place to live. And the ratings, even for Wilsonville as a place to work, they're higher than the national benchmark. So I think this says that people are happy with their community, and they also recognize that this is a special place. I have been on council now for 3 full years, and in that 3 years, there has been 3 different arrangements of council members. And I mean, Councilor Linville gave some kind of history, but that's just the condensed, the very recent history, right? So 3 different arrangements in those 3 years. And this has been a product of our natural environment without term limits. It's not been, I would say to some, it's not this artificially forced revolving door of people coming in. It's what we have as a natural environment with elections, with people that volunteer to serve and to hold these positions too. Wilsonville is what we know of Wilsonville, this great community that we have. This is a product of that natural environment. It's a product of a blend of new voices. We have some new voices here and experienced individuals. And I think that is what has brought us here. And as a newer person on council, I see a tremendous value in having experienced people and new people serving together. And I think that is where the magic happens. And that is what brings us to our 95%. I think that framework has given our community a lot. And that, I guess, all of those reasons is where I have concern and caution. So this will be decided by the voters in our community. I hope that context is helpful in making this decision. It's a hard thing. I feel passionate about it. You probably can hear that because I love the community. And I see them intertwined. But, yep.
Thank you. Counselor Lehan.
Yes, well, it would be hard for me to not view this as view myself as sort of a personal target of this, since I am one of those two mayors who served for more than 10 years. But I appreciate what Councilor Akkerval said, that this is probably the best example of an organic council. That is what it has been elected by the voters. And it has always been my goal, whether I was a neophyte councilor or a mayor or now I guess just an old lady on the council. No.
Be careful.
Oh,
You're
yeah,
younger than I am.
I know, that's right. That's right. I'd be careful. Which is to say, I have always thought it was good to have young voices. We have a variety here of ages, men and women, of and experience levels. And and all of that, it gives you the best mix, I think, and it really shows you the wisdom of the voters who can come up with this sort of perfect alchemy, which I think it is one of the best council mixes I've ever been involved with. Now, one of the reasons that I think this is a dangerous road to go down is that it will forevermore weaken the city of Wilsonville's position in the region and beyond. Wilsonville has a reputation and a history of playing essentially out of our league, way beyond our size level, at virtually every level of government, at the metro level, the Washington County, Clackamas County, the state legislature, state agencies, and at the federal government level. We carry our weight and then some. We play with the much bigger cities, whether we're talking about land use or significant battles. And two of the big ones were the prison siting. We would not have Villebois if we had not been able to re-site the prison to where it is at Coffee Creek. That was a 3-year battle where we switched sides from being the darlings of the Republicans in the state legislature to being the darlings of the Democrats in the state legislature. And our position had never changed. And yet, I don't know. And of course, we were up against the Department of Corrections. We were up against the governor's office. And we stayed true and principled and came through that as a community, I think, because we had this kind of experience at the council level, and and we have mayors. When I think about the 3 mayors that I have been since I've been on council, which is to say me, Mayor Knapp, and Jerry Crummell. These are 3 mayors who all played significant roles at the state legislature, at the regional level with Metro. We certainly have been never we have always stated and followed the direction of our constituents. And one of the best examples of that was when we was in the 2004, the industrial lands battle, which was Frog Pond and Charbonneau. And Metro was looking at industrial development in Frog Pond, industrial development in south of Charbonneau. And the city of Wilsonville went up against Metro on both of those cases. We packed the Holiday Inn with citizens, 400 citizens, many of whom testified. People from Meadows, from Landover, from Charbonneau. The community came together and we prevailed again when you wouldn't think we had a chance at it. We've prevailed on everything from land use issues and prison siting to smart grants, where we're competing, playing up there with Chariots and TriMet for money at the federal level, because we've had mayors who have built the networks, built the relationships at every level of government. And what it condemns you to, it sounds like 12 years is a long time. Surely you've learned how to do this by then. But what you are condemned to is assuming, and I think it's a reasonable assumption, that a mayor is best if they have served on council first before they jump into being mayor. If they have, then your mayor is now forever condemned to 2 terms. If they've served a term, even a partial term, they only get 2 terms as mayor. Well, the first term as mayor, you are a neophyte mayor. You don't know people, people don't know you. When you're going to these regional meetings, federal meetings, state level meetings, you will be, it just takes a while to learn the ropes. And then your next term, you're a lame duck. So you go instantly from being a neophyte to being a lame duck. Even if you were not intending to run after your second term, everybody knows from the very beginning, you will not be running again. You can't run again, no matter how much your voters want you. And that puts that mayor in a weak position. And that's why I say, for the mayor in particular, it's one thing to limit city councilors, but the mayor who has to build these networks, to limit the mayor to being either a neophyte or a lame duck, will put the city of Wilsonville in a very weak position. It would be like limiting your state senators to 1 term or 2 terms. And you will never get any, your senators will never get any positions of influence at the federal government. You are shooting yourself in the foot on this going forward, is my opinion. And one of the things particularly about this one is that it includes partial terms. So if someone fills out the end of an expired term, Councilor Linville, for instance, she might only, if she only fills out a year or so, it counts as a term. Because now she can't run for another, she can only run for 2 terms after her partial term. And that's even more severely limiting. I think that those are the main things that occur to me. Is it's not so much an issue for the council. It is a huge issue for the mayor to condemn yourselves to a weak mayor. And and I think Wilsonville is a prime example of a city that has has been playing well above our level. So that's all I can think of.
Okay, thank you very much. I also am a person who would be affected by this, clearly. And I think that some of the comments that have been made have touched on some of the things that are particular to the mayor's position. The reality is different, I think, than the perception of the people advocating for this term limit issue. The reality is that a huge number of the decisions that affect our community are not made in Wilsonville. They're made at other tables. And if we are not at those tables in a responsible, credible, trusted way, then we will forfeit the ability to influence those decisions. Wilsonville exists in 2 counties, so we have relationships to build and maintain both with Washington County and with Clackamas County. We have the relationships with the electeds in those counties. We also have relationships with staff that work in those counties. We function with the county commissions. We function with the coordinating committees. Both those counties maintain a coordinating committee where elected people from other jurisdictions come and get together. You have to get to know those people personally to be able to work with them effectively. They have to trust your judgment when you speak. They have to find you credible and responsible over time in order to be effective in working in those groups. The same is true at Metro government. We have elected people at Metro government, and we have the staff at Metro government, and we interface with both of them. We work on with the Metro Council. We work with JPAC, the Joint Policy Advisory Committee on Transportation. We work with MPACT, the Metropolitan Policy Advisory Committee. The work that those groups do advise the Metro Council. Those are large groups, 20 or 30 people on each of those groups, and we have to be able to function with them in encouraging those groups to reach recommendations that are appropriate and helpful to the cities. The fact that we are a fringe edge city in the metro area gives us a different perspective than those cities that are in the core of the metropolitan area. So it's important that our perspective come forward if we wish to have an influence. We are functioning at the state legislative level. I reported tonight about 3 bills. We're 1 day into the legislative session. We've already testified as a city on 3 bills that matter to us. That testimony has to be from a mayor that is recognized and that many of those legislators have experience with and whose opinion they respect in order for our position to have any weight. We work at the federal level. We talk to our federal electeds all the time. We work with the Federal Transportation Administration when we're talking transit. The amount of grants that we've been able to successfully procure for our smart transit systems is totally out of scale to the size of community we are. And that does not happen by chance. it's an ongoing relationship, and just in work session today, people were somewhat astounded by the fact that we are able to get grants that have enabled us to continue to build our transit system as effectively as we had. We function at the Metropolitan Mayors Consortium. We function at the Clackamas County Business Alliance. We function at the Greater Portland, Inc. Economic Development Group. We function at the West Side Economic Alliance. It takes relationships in all of these venues to carry the future of Wilsonville forward in an effective way. And I know from experience that you don't make that happen in 4 years as a term. You cannot build those relationships and be effective within that period of time. It takes much time, and the fact is that I'm still learning, and the fact that there is turnover in all those other groups also means you have to be working over time to develop those relationships. Those relationships depend on credibility, they depend on trust, they depend on being able to get other entities and other individuals to support Wilsonville when it comes to issues that affect us. So I know that the experience that comes out of time developing those relationships matters, and to think otherwise is simply naive. It's simply lacking understanding of how things happen and how we get to the kind of high-level support for Wilsonville that Councilor Akkervall spoke of that is simply not true in many other cities. It was mentioned that Wilsonville plays kind of out of our weight class, and that's certainly true, that most cities of 25,000 don't have the influence and the success that Wilsonville has had. I know that some people feel like metro government is something to be opposed all the time. I think that that is simply Don Quixote tilting at windmills. The voters put metro government into place, and it exists, and we're in it, and if we can't play effectively within that structure, we get zero done. So while we have not been in alignment with metro policy all the time, I think that our principled positions have earned us respect over the long period of time that we have been working with that. We consistently get planning money from them. We consistently get grants from Metro. We consistently have a voice in transportation planning, in the urban growth boundary planning, and all of those kinds of things that matter to our city. We have an effect, and you don't do that in 4 years. You don't do that in 8 years. It takes time. So term limits fail to recognize how this work is done. A term limit, as is proposed, will disadvantage Wilsonville forever going forward. That is just fact. And if people don't understand how things work, they may not see that, but that is how it will happen. I perceive that there are a small group of people who are disgruntled that they have not been able to take over control of council by having their particular preferred people elected. And to that, I would say, look at the history. We've had 50 years of history. You've had 50 different people on council. You know, if you've got good people, put them up and let them get elected. And that's how it works. And yes, the people speak to that. And if they don't agree with the position that you're advocating for, term limits are not the answer to try to tilt the table. Get some people that people will support to run and put them up and let them do so. I don't think that people that think we have got a outstanding community, the way these 90+% favorable ratings on our surveys indicate over and over and over, want to have a major change in direction. It's not what the people are calling for, and therefore I perceive that the advocates who are trying to get a couple of us out of office because they would like something else to happen, whether it's on the airport or whether it's on transportation or whether it's on housing, you know, the avenue is to participate in the process, not to try to make an end run to eliminate other people's choices by having no chance to vote for somebody they want to vote for. So we have term limits in terms of you can vote me out every 4 years, you can vote any counselor out every 4 years. If you've got somebody that's better, put them up and let them win an election. And then you can see if they can perform the way that you would like and whether they will have the staying ability to learn the ropes, to develop those relationships, to participate in the wider function, and be effective. The trick is not just to have an intramural team where everybody gets to have a time on the field. The trick is to have effective leadership, responsible leadership who can credibly lead this city forward. And it's pretty clear that the citizens think they've had that and they have it present and they will continue to have it unless you handicap the game in ways that that eliminates the ability to have the experience that makes it happen. So I think this is a terrible idea. I think it's damaging to the city, and I ask the citizens of Wilsonville to reject it. I think that the stories that have been told are already misleading, and I'm very interested in the city making a voters pamphlet statement. The social media comments by some of the advocates stating that the citizens have decided they want to have term limits is not accurate. The fact is they may have signed a petition to allow it to be a vote, but they haven't decided they want to have term limits. That's misleading. That's not fair. That's not accurate. It's not true. It's indicative of the lack of candor that's going on. So I think that we've got to do better than that. And I'm hopeful that the citizens will understand the dynamic and will be able to make the appropriate call. We'll have to see how it goes, and we'll have to see how truthful the arguments are. I'm disappointed that we've already had to deal with that question in some of the communications that are going on. So it's my understanding that if the council takes no action, this goes to the ballot automatically, and that council is recommending that we do not, city attorney's recommending that we do not take a formal action because it's not necessary to do so. So the questions that are on the table that remain include whether or not the council wants to put forth an alternative ballot measure. And I guess at this point, my recommendation is no, because an alternative measure is not better than what we've got right now. What we've got right now is the citizens get to vote for each of us every 4 years, whether they want us to continue or not. And you have a mix of experience, you have a mix of ages, you have a mix of genders, you have a mix of experiences to bring to this dais, and that's how it works well. And I think that if things aren't broken, don't go trying to make major changes, and that's exactly what this proposal does. So I'm not in favor of an alternative measure to go forward. Is anyone else wanting to push for a measure, or what's the perspective? Councilor Linville.
Mr. Mayor, I would like to move that the city council not forward a competing ballot measure at this time.
Okay. Is there a second to that motion?
I'll second.
Thank you. Someone else wanted to speak? Was that Councilor Lehan?
Yeah, yes. Well, along those lines, I think this is a particularly poorly written term limit thing. And I think we could come up with an alternative that would be less bad, that would, for instance, eliminate partial terms as counting towards something that would separate the mayor from the council positions. But none of it would be as good as now, which is without term limits for either the council or the mayor, where all the power is in the hands of the voter. And, yeah, so anyway, that's why I would support this motion, because I can think of ways to tinker around the edges and make something less bad, but what we have now is the best.
Okay, thank you. Counselor West.
I just don't think the sky is going to fall, and Wilsonville will continue to be an amazing, beautiful city that it is, that we all love. And Lake Oswego is still an amazing, beautiful city right down the
Are
highway.
you addressing the motion?
I am getting there. I am. And so I just think it will continue to be that. And I do want to caution the council that to put a competing measure up, because we're all impacted by this in a different way, every single one sitting here is impacted. But once we're done and we've moved on with our lives and the city's still here and thriving and we still like living here if we're still here, the future councilors will have to live with what the voters decide. I don't think that we should do something that looks self-serving. We should respect the petition process that was put out there. It's going to be on the ballot. It is what it is. We acknowledge that, and then we just move forward, and you can either publicly and advocate for it in your everyday lives or out in the community or here on the council. But I think that we should, I mean, that's kind of your option. Either you're going to have term limits and you put a competing measure and you still get term limits, or you don't do anything like the mayor said and you leave it alone and see what the voters say. And that's part of the democratic process. That's part of the voters making the call. This is all on the up and up. And I respect that process. And I think that we should just allow it to go forward as the voters have already decided.
Councilor Linville.
Well, I don't think the voters have decided anything yet, but I guess I would like to just state for what my rationale is for making the motion that we don't develop a competing ballot measure. And first of all, I don't support the term limits concept, so forwarding a competing measure would might give the impression that I do, and I don't. I think it's, as Councilor West has stated, it's going to be up to the voters to decide that, and they will hopefully make the right decision. I think if I go back to Councilor Lahan's comments as it relates to me, mind you, I have no intention at any point in my career of applying for or running for the mayor's position. But I will tell you, as an appointee, as a person who will have served 18 months by the time the end of this term happens, there's no way in the world that I would feel qualified in putting myself on the ballot for mayor. And probably would like to have one more term underneath my belt if I was planning to do that, and it's not in my interest at all. That would leave me one term to serve as mayor. And I think that's just an example of any of the qualified people that are sitting as city councilors right now. I think it pretty much precludes any councilor from serving as a mayor. But anyway, I just wanted to clarify why I did not, why I supported us not forwarding a competing ballot measure.
Okay, so the motion on the table is to not enter a competing ballot measure. Is there any other needed discussion before we vote on that motion? If not, I will call for the vote. The motion is to not put forward a competing ballot measure. All in favor of that motion, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Passes 5-0. Thank you. Can staff advise us, is there any other decision that we need to make prior to going to ordinance number 840?
Not according to conversations. No.
I don't think so. I think it covers the one other.
The one other optional, yeah. All right.
They're not going to vote affirmatively on the emergency.
I guess at this point, I will request reading then on ordinance number 840, which is scheduled for a public hearing.
Ordinance number 840, an ordinance of the, sorry. An ordinance of the City of Wilsonville authorizing the preparation, submittal, and publication of an explanatory statement for voters pamphlet and declaring an emergency.
Thank you. I will call to order Wilsonville City Council public hearing on ordinance number 840 as has been read. Ladies and gentlemen, council will take public testimony tonight in a public hearing format. The hearing will be conducted as follows. First, city staff will present their report, if any. Then we will ask for testimony by proponents, opponents, and those neither in favor nor against the proposed ordinance. If you wish to testify, please complete a speaker card from the counter at the side of the room, pass forward to the city recorder. When called, come forward to the microphone, state your name and address, and make your statement. I do request those providing testimony not repeat testimony already given. Simply indicating your agreement with certain prior testimony is entirely sufficient. Do you want, would you please brief us on the content then on ordinance number 840?
Sure. So ordinance number 840 is required under the Oregon Administrative Rules if you wish to place an explanatory statement on a ballot measure initiative petition. If you don't have such an ordinance in place, then you're not authorized to do so. And this is an ordinance that would continue to apply to any ballot measure or initiative. But it really just came up because when in the context of planning to do it on this particular ballot measure, we determined that we didn't have, in fact, an ordinance in place. In fact, we have very little in our code and in our city charter on elections, and that's probably something that we should look at more closely. But because this just came up very close to their deadline for getting it onto the May ballot, we haven't had a lot of time to spend on this kind of thing in anticipation of it. So, and at the time that we put this ordinance together, we didn't know for sure when the council would be able to meet. If there were not a holiday on our regular council meeting, it would not need to be on an emergency clause. But because there is to have the full 30 days before the deadline for submittal, I drafted it with an emergency clause, and certainly it qualifies because we are under a tight time frame, and it's important, I think, if the council wishes to have or wants to have the ability or directs staff to get an explanatory statement put together, that we have the time, we know that we have the adequate time to do it. I would make it clear that the explanatory statement is not in favor of or in opposition to. There is an ability for individuals to be able to do that into the voter's pamphlet. There's a process for it, and I think there's a small fee attached to it. The only thing that we can submit is a neutral statement, and to that effect, I prepared in conjunction with the city manager and the city recorder a statement that I believe to be neutral. I actually also went over it with Secretary of State to be sure that, there's words that they consider to be, that can be construed as not neutral, so you want to always avoid those words. So we did that. I did get a comment or a couple comments this morning from the attorney for the initiative petitioners, and I thought his comments were reasonable, so I made the changes that he had requested, so you have a revised statement there. there's a change in the first paragraph to remove the word retroactively. Technically, the charter amendment isn't retroactive. The part of the ballot measure that's retroactive is the impact on the terms that on all of your terms. So that's where that language was better placed. So it's down in the fourth paragraph. So that's what that changes.
Okay. Does council have any question for staff with regard to the specifics of ordinance number 840? I do. Councilor West?
Barbara. Question. So this ordinance says all, right? So going forward, if there's any more initiative process popping up, we would have to make a neutral statement on every single one to come up, right? So that we look neutral. Am I understanding that correctly?
Well, yes, the idea of it is that it's your policy to make a neutral statement on any ballot measure. I mean, the law is kind of sometimes difficult to follow because this is actually not in Secretary of State's regulations or in the statute. It's in an OAR. And in fact, when we first started working on this, we were told to write one, and then the elections official called back and said, you have to have an ordinance in place to do it. So if you don't, make sure you get an ordinance in place, because apparently he had just been through some training and had been taught that through the Secretary of State's office. So yes, the idea would be that any measure going forward, you
have to weigh in on.
You would write a neutral statement. You're not really weighing in, you're just looking at it and making sure. The idea is to explain it to your voters so that it's clear, and it's not to say, in fact, you have to say, this is what happens if it would, and you have to say not if it does pass, you have to say, this is what would happen if it would pass. You have to use the word would. That was one thing they made very clear. And then the other thing you have to do is you have to put in, this is what would happen if it failed. And so that's kind of the crux of it.
But we never needed one up to this point. Have we ever had this issue come up before where we were put in this position to make an explanatory statement?
There's a distinction if it's a city initiative by city council.
Okay.
That's different than if it's a petition gathered signature comes to the city council.
Yes, then, right, then you do always write it, and then, but if you wish to write an explanatory statement on measures that don't come directly from the council, that's what you need the ordinance for. And in terms of my term here, it's not come up, this isn't very common, I don't think. Also, I understand that this is kind of a new interpretation that's
from the Secretary of State's office.
Yes,
Okay.
So, whether that's true or not, I don't know. But like I said, the elections official originally told us we needed to do it. And then he said, well, you have to have this ordinance in place. And in checking with Tualatin, they were kind of in the same boat. And so they did an ordinance and wrote an explanatory statement. And I did, since this ballot measure is very close to what Tualatin's was, I did look at their explanatory statement for some guidance on it.
It mirrors it, correct? Like basically this petition initiative mirrors Tualatin's?
Pardon?
This initiative petition mirrors Tualatin's that just passed?
I would say yes, it's pretty darn close, if not identical, so.
Other questions for staff? Okay, if not, we would be prepared for testimony by anyone wishing to testify. I've not received any speaker cards. Is there anyone that wishes to testify at this point with regard to ordinance number 840? I see none, and therefore I will close the public hearing and ask council, what is your pleasure with regard to ordinance number 840? Councilor Akkervall.
I move to approve ordinance 840 that will give the staff authority to put a neutral explanatory statement in the voter's pamphlet.
Okay, is there a second? Moved and seconded. Point of clarification, we have a draft statement in front of us. Does ordinance number 840 authorize this specific explanation, or do we need a separate motion to authorize this specific explanation, assuming the ordinance passes?
The ordinance is written so you're authorizing staff to do it. Part of it is it has to be neutral, and so it can't be council saying, do this, do that. We've got to make our best effort to make it neutral, and then
Vet it.
yeah, and then vet it, and that's why the three of us have all worked on it, and also I've consulted with the Secretary of State's office, where they technically won't review and sign off on explanatory statements. They will help you, and they will say, you've got a word in here that should not be there.
All right, I understand all of that. I don't feel it answers my question.
So, no, you don't have to do a separate motion.
No separate motion?
No.
Okay.
That's all you need.
All right, thank you. Discussion?
Well,
Counselor Akkerval?
yeah. I mean, I think this makes sense as I, Counselor West's comment about the petitioner's text mirroring or being very similar to what was in Tualatin. I understand this explanatory statement also happened in that case. If it's a page from that book, then it makes sense to me. It makes sense that we would want to give an explanatory statement on something of this magnitude, and it seems like a good idea. So I think we proceed with that.
Okay. Counselor West?
I think it's an important question to ask also is we've never had to have it, so why have it now? And do we want to continue to have to make that effort? If these initiative petitions come up over and over again, do we want to always weigh in with the neutral statement? Now our hand will be forced. So there is that going forward also. There will be explanations within the, from probably all kinds of different parties within the ballot information packet that goes out. So I would just know that we're making a commitment to do this forever going forward unless we change it, I guess. But so that is quite a diversion from where we have been historically.
Other discussion? My comment would be, yes, I think we need to have an explanation in the voter's pamphlet because I'm not confident of the neutrality of the advocates at this point in time. And I think it's only responsible to have a neutral explanation offered to voters so they can more clearly understand before they make their choice. So I think it's important that we do this. If some other initiative came forward and the council felt strongly they did not want to put a statement in, it's a matter of an action by council to undo this. I can't quite conceive why that would be necessary going forward, and I don't expect we're going to have initiatives very often. Gee, in my 12 years as mayor, I've never had one before, so what the heck. I'll call for the vote on the motion. All in favor of the motion to approve ordinance number 840, please say aye.
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 Passes 5-0. Thank you very much. That brings us to city manager business.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
Nothing? Legal business. More legal business.
I think you've had enough legal business for one night.
All right, thank you. Council, anything further? Remind you that we do have an urban renewal agency meeting to do immediately following. If nothing further for council, I will call adjournment at 8:32. Anyone need a break? If not, oh, I'm gonna give it to you. So the Urban Renewal Agency meeting is dealing with the issue that I stepped down from. So I'm going to hand chairmanship of the Urban Renewal meeting over to Council President Akkerval also.
Very good with the hammer.
I'm good. I'm never sure when we do the tap, but okay. So I call to order? Do I call to order? I guess I call to order the Urban Renewal Agency meeting on February 3rd, 2020 at 8:33 PM. And we will start with a roll call, please.
Member Linville,
Present.
Member West,
Present.
Member Akkerval,
Here.
Member Lehan,
Here.
and Chair Knapp has recused himself.
And the first item on our agenda is citizen input. So this is an opportunity for visitors to address the Urban Renewal Agency Board on items not on the agenda. It is also the time to address items that are on the agenda but not scheduled for a public hearing. Staff and the board will make every effort to respond to questions raised during citizen input before tonight's meeting ends or as quickly as possible thereafter. And if there are comments, I ask that we limit them to 3 minutes. Okay, I was going to say, if we have any comment cards, please go ahead and pass them, but I see none happening. So can I ask for the consent agenda to be read? Moving right.
Minutes of the October 7th, 2019 URA meeting.
Thank you. Is there a motion?
Chair, I move to approve the consent agenda as read.
Second.
Is that what it was?
Any discussion? No? Okay, then all in favor, please say aye. Aye. Opposed? Abstain? So the vote passes 4-0, which brings us to new business and resolution number 340.
URA resolution number 340. A resolution of the Urban Renewal Agency of the City of Wilsonville amending URA resolution number 281, authorizing acquisition of property and property interests related to construction of the 5th Street Kinsman Road Extension Project through eminent domain.
And is there a staff report on this item?
Yes, I will keep it short.
Thank you.
So my name is Zach Weigel, a Capital Projects Engineering Manager for the city, and this is similar to the resolution passed by City Council earlier for the 5th Kinsman project, just updating the acquisition numbers and number of properties and amount of property, and just reaffirming the Urban Renewal Agency's authorization to begin acquisition for the project. The reason this is before the Urban Renewal Agency is the project will be spending urban renewal dollars to acquire the property. So I'm happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Do the members of the board have any questions for staff? No? No. So this is related to the item that we previously discussed during council. Is there a motion that anybody would like to make?
Madam Chair, I move to approve URA resolution number 340.
Thank you. And is there a second?
I'll second.
And any discussion on resolution 340?
I would just note that we have discussed this in the presentation and work session. It's a very important project, and this will help move that forward.
Thank you.
Agreed.
Excellent. So if there's no further discussion, then we will go ahead and do the vote. So I ask all in favor to please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed or abstain, and this vote passes 4-0 as well. And that is the end of our meeting. Thank you very much.
Fantastic job.
They adjourned.
Yeah.
You like that gavel? That second one was a little more.